Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast. Each week, your host, Casey Hasten, Director of Recruiting at VIP, will bring you valuable insights from thought leaders, introduce you to incredible companies, and bring you tips for landing your dream job from our team of executive recruiters at VIP. And now, Casey Hasten.
Welcome to the We Are VIP podcast, a podcast devoted to adding value to your career or candidate search, brought to you by VIP. I'm your host, Casey Hasten. I'm an executive recruiter, director of recruiting with VIP, and your all-around hiring guru. And I love to bring you tips and tricks and ways to just collapse that timeline to success every week by bringing on thought leaders and experts to help you along your career journey. Today is no different. So I'd like to welcome Kyle Gabhart, managing partner at Bluegrass Legacy Group, author and keynote speaker. Kyle helps coach individuals and address groups by providing common sense advice and tough love. Yeah, he does. Tough love. His mission is to teach individuals how to make smart decisions and create a lasting legacy to build wealth for your family. But he does so much more than that, and we're going to get into it. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm super excited, Casey. Thanks for having me.
First of all, I know that you have a big family.
Everything's bigger in Texas. I'm a native Texan, so I just had to roll with that. 6 kiddos and now 2 grandbabies. Oh. And as of 3 weeks ago, we are empty nesters because we sent our last one off to boot camp. So he's in Georgia right now.
So Army?
Yes.
I thought that was right. Boot camp in Georgia. Well, Thank you for his service.
Absolutely. We're super excited. Very
Is this
proud.
Your first child to go into the military?
It is. My grandfather was in the Army, as was my father, so World War II and Vietnam respectively, but first kiddo to go into the service.
That is amazing. My son was also in the service.
Okay.
He got out about 2 years ago, so he did about 5 years in the Air Force.
Okay, wonderful.
So, and I think that is such a good journey, especially for young men, because he came out of boot camp a completely different kid.
We're looking forward to that part.
It was so funny when we went to the boot camp to his graduation. So you know about the tapping out, right?
So we know that like the day before is like family day, and then there's the actual day, and that's coming up in September, just in a few weeks for us.
So I don't know if they do this in the Army, but I know they did it in the Air Force, and I didn't know this ahead of time.
Okay.
So after they do their little debut, they run their mile, they come in, they have to stand at attention. They can't move until a family member taps them out.
Interesting.
So you might want to check on that, because my poor kid was standing in the heat for a while because I was on the very top bleacher.
Got it. All right. Duly noted.
And we had to do that twice. So the second time I knew to be closer to the ground.
Okay. Perfect.
So it was very interesting. But and I'll tell you just a funny story real quick. So, we were visiting him and we were walking around the grounds, and he's all in his dress blues, and I'm just like, that's my kid,
right.
And we start to walk, and I start to cross the road, but not in the and where you normally cross the road. I was jaywalking. And he just put his arm out and he goes, "We don't do that here." I went,
wow.
Who are you?
That's amazing.
That was just one little thing, but it just ripples all the way down.
I love it.
So it was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And now I kind of want to go back and look at pictures. So, but anyway, I say that because, I think that when you go to his graduation, it's such a special moment, but tap him out.
Okay. Don't make him sweat it out. Okay. Good
don't leave him hanging. So you also have this interesting kind of, I don't know if it's a side hustle or if it's something you just do on the side, but you create game boards?
So I think the best way to describe me is that I get bored easily. And so as a result, there's a lot of little bitty side projects and side hustles and so forth. And so, yes, in 2009, I designed a board game. And initially I thought, hey, this sounds like fun. Let me go and run with this. And I handmade 200 copies, like at my kitchen table, assembling the boxes, selling them at game conventions. And then I was all ready to print thousands with a manufacturer in Hong Kong when a publisher in Santa Fe came to me and said, hey, are you interested in having someone take this off your hands? And so I licensed it to them. And now it's in 3 languages. It's sold all over the world. And yes, I'm a giant geek. So board game.
What's the board game?
Arctic scavengers. So it's a post-apocalyptic ice age, and 90% of the world's population has been wiped out, and you are forming a tribe aiming to survive the harsh climate.
I'm going to have to check that out. That sounds like fun. Did you do the intro for it too?
I should have.
Absolutely, you should have. So before we dig into what we're going to talk about today, I'm a huge networker, and I love to connect the dots for people.
Absolutely.
So how did we get connected?
I love that question. I had to kind of think through it as well because, as you know, we have a lot of spiderweb connections. And so finding the original connection, I had to hunt for a bit, but it was Damon Lemby. And I was on his podcast. And as he and I were talking, it just like connected for me, said, you've got to meet Casey. You guys are wired for it. And you're in the same area.
I know.
So, yeah.
Crazy. A lot of my connections, not a lot, but several of my connections have come through Damon.
In California,
CEO of Learn It, who took over from his dad. And the company, I think it's been 50 something years.
They just hit a milestone recently. I forget what it was, but they just hit a big milestone.
It was big.
Yeah.
And they provide such a great platform for people. Like I send my candidates to them because I work in accounting and finance, and Excel is like a staple.
Right.
And some people don't know how to use Excel as well as they might need to for that role.
Sure.
And so Damon has been great. He's got so many different courses from beginner to advanced in Excel and it's a trusted partner. It's a trusted resource.
That's so good.
And so I just sent him over to him.
Perfect.
And I mean, he's got other, courses as well and leadership and all that kind of stuff, but that's the one I use the most is Excel.
Sure.
So, and I met Damon. How did I meet Damon? I don't even remember, but I have loved meeting Damon.
Yeah.
And he actually flew in from California to record live.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I just had to fight the traffic on 635.
I know, which can be really bad this time of day. So, well, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Oh my goodness. I do as little as possible.
I don't believe that.
I'm not very good at it. Like that's my goal is to do as little as possible, but I mentioned earlier I get bored easily, so I end up doing a lot of different things. My day job is financial planning and wealth management. We have a practice based out of Keller. A lot of our clients are local, but we have clients in 12 states. We have a few expats as well that are international. And it really is a matter of helping people get clear about what their goals are, organize their assets then to make that a reality, and provide some accountability in staying true to that roadmap. But the term asset is very special to me because it's far broader than most people assume. So for example, not only would it be stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, kind of the normal thing, but we embrace more broadly, we deal with precious metals, we deal with real estate, we deal with private equity. But even beyond those, when I talk to people about assets, I want to know things that are precious to them as an individual, things that represent their values and their ideals, because ultimately what they're going to hand off to the next generation certainly is money, but is also values, priorities, and routines that they've developed and things that ultimately become this heritage that can be passed along so that they live beyond just the things that they did or said, but ultimately that then becomes a permanent asset within their family. And I'll give you a great example. We have a tradition now for it's going on 2 years. Every single dinner we do Go Big. BIG is an acronym. It stands for Begin in Gratitude. And so very simple question, what are you grateful for today? And we don't allow the kids to repeat something from a previous time. So it forces them to think intentionally about, well, what am I grateful for? And we have big family dinners all the time. And so this is something we do every single night. Okay. I have a 2.5-year-old grandson. He has watched this pattern. Last night, I was taking care of him and his younger brother. My wife and his mom were out having dinner. We sat down with this incredible spread of hot dog that I had made. I'm pretty handy in the kitchen. I don't mean to brag, but it was a pretty handsome hot dog that I'd prepared. And about 2 minutes in, he looked at me and he said, "I grateful for Ebby BG." So Ebby is his grandma name for my wife. BG is his grandpa name for me. Bluegrass, also bald guy, also board gamer. It works for a lot of reasons. But he had seen that pattern that we had created. And at 2.5 years old, on his own, without prompting, he goes, I'm going to tell you what I'm grateful for. And oh, by the way, I'm grateful for you and for my grandma. And so I became an absolute puddle. There was a pile of chocolate chip cookies nearby. I let him eat all of them. I gave him my keys and my credit card, and he pretty much runs the house now.
That is amazing. And I love that you talk about the assets being more than just, what we see as wealth, right?
Yep.
And as you were saying that, what kicked in with me, the routines, the things that I want to pass on to hopefully my grandkids, if I ever get them, I want to pass on, what I've put together, my morning routine, what I think really helps. And I begin my day in gratitude.
Amazing.
And so, and my goal is to end my day in gratitude as well. But I will be completely honest, I'm not as good about that.
That one's tougher. I would agree. The day wears you down.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I have an evening routine that I do that I say I'm going to do that I've just really, it hasn't stuck yet. But my morning routine's pretty solid, and I do begin my day with gratitude. But I want to bookend my day with gratitude.
I love that.
Because I think that's so important. And I love that your 2.5-year-old picked up on that routine, and that's so important.
It was a blessing to experience that.
And I can imagine that you were in a puddle. So let's talk about your book.
Sure.
We've got a copy of it here. Legends Don't Retire, and neither should you. What does that mean?
Well, so here's the thing, right? In my industry of financial planning, wealth management, I feel like we've done a disservice because we have elevated this notion of retirement to where it is the pinnacle of what everybody's aiming to have. And the problem is, once we get a taste of it, we realize it's hollow. So March of 2020, the entire world got to take retirement for a test drive. So your schedule's clear, you don't have anywhere to be, you have no obligations, and it was awesome for about 2 weeks, right? It was pajama pants, it was Tiger King, like we were living the good life for those couple of weeks. And then week 3 rolled around and Carol Baskin's rolled around. And we realized like, oh, well, that's all this is we're just gonna keep doing this over and over. And by week 4, we're ready to kill each other. So we think that what we want is to do absolutely nothing. We get a taste of that and we go, that's empty. I can't live like this. I need a purpose. I need to pour myself into something. And so we're fond of saying at Bluegrass that it's okay to retire from something, but it's important you retire to something. And so the book is Legends Don't Retire, and neither should you. That doesn't mean you have to die at your desk. It means that you have to have a purpose beyond work, a purpose beyond just accumulating a pool of dollars so that you can then fish and golf for the rest of your life, and instead find something of meaning and something of impact to pour your energy and capabilities into. And quite frankly, that's what keeps you young anyway.
Can I tell you a story about my dad real quick?
Please, I'd love you.
My dad retired about, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I was really worried about him because my dad is one of these very unique individuals, very, very, very smart, Mensa certified.
Wow.
Very smart. And electrical engineer by trade, but just has many, many patents with TI.
Okay.
So
right down the street.
Yeah. And so originally, you remember the wafers that we used? They used to have to be inspected by people.
Okay.
And my dad came up with the system that eliminated the human factor and created the algorithm to, I'm not that technical, to inspect these wafers. So now all of it's done mechanically.
Because in a clean room, you don't want people in there if you can avoid it.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
And so he came up with that algorithm. And, TI ended up selling that patent for millions and millions of dollars later on. But when he retired, so you can see where his brain is. He's always like this. So we joke because he has what we call a mad scientist lab. I kid you not.
Okay.
So it's upstairs above he's got a huge shop. And so it's got a little studio apartment in there and got the shop above the studio apartment. And one day I was up there and I was like, Dad, where do those double doors go? He goes, oh, that's the rest of my lab.
Oh my.
And I was like, is it safe?
Requires a retina scan and like handprint.
Yeah. And so you open these double doors and all these lights go. There is so much stuff in this room. And I'm like, Dad, what are we going to do with this stuff? Like nuts and bolts and circuits and all this stuff. And I'm like, so he's always in there tinkering. And he knows he can walk in that room and all that vast stuff, all those little bitty pieces.
Sure.
And he'll be like, I need this one.
Goodness gracious.
And he will go back and he'll put it in and he's like, yeah, there you go. There's your robot, you know?
Okay, I walk into rooms and I'm not sure why I walked in.
No, right?
And I have to double back to remember why I'm there.
Yeah, he knows every little piece in there. And there's probably millions and millions of pieces in there.
Amazing.
But I mean, that first time when I opened that door, I went, chick, 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 chick. You know, the light.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
for sure.
I was like, what is this?
That's incredible.
So, but anyway, so I wanted to share that with you because I feel like that's what's keeping him young.
Yes.
And keeping him in. I think it's so important that you do have something to do. I know that when, March 2020, when you're talking about, I was pretty fortunate that, a lot of what I can do remotely.
Sure.
And so we kept functioning just like a well-oiled team and never stopped. But the problem was, now think about it, I'm a recruiter.
Sure.
I schedule interviews.
Right.
How to make that shift from in-person interviews, which everybody thought that's the only way you can do it.
Of course.
We used to meet all of our candidates before we'd ever send them out on an interview. It was a requirement.
Right.
And now COVID showed us that's not really necessary.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We can do it over Zoom. We can do a lot of phone calls. And so we had to make that switch. So it took a couple of weeks. But I'll tell you when I really realized when I was not good at not doing anything, Snowvid.
Ooh.
Remember that?
I do, very much so.
So here in Texas, for those of you that aren't in Texas, we're not used to the cold, number one. And we had a solid week of ice, snow, everything.
It took out power lines.
Yeah. Half the people didn't have power. I was fortunate I had power. I didn't have water for 3 days. But it was so cold, the heater couldn't catch up. And I just sat on the couch with my dogs just like this.
See, that's the preparation you need for my book or for my game, Arctic Scavengers.
Yep.
Post-apocalyptic ice age,
Perfect.
organizing your tribe, scavenging for resources. You've already got the right mindset.
Yeah, one thing I did learn after the water went off the first time, they had they managed to get it turned back on, and then I had another pipe burst.
Sure.
And fortunately, I live in a townhome community, so we have maintenance people on staff. I know a lot of people had like major damage from burst pipes. I did not have that. But the second time, after I got the water back on, I filled up all the bathtubs.
Yes, a lot of us did that.
Yeah. I didn't do it the first time I was told to. I didn't do it. I was sad.
Because it sounded weird.
It does.
I mean,
it's
honestly,
like, it's not going to happen to me.
Nah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a real experiment, wasn't it?
For sure. For sure.
And me, I'm like hungry and I have no food in the house and I'm like trying to DoorDash and they're like, we're closed for everybody's safety. And I'm like, why? There was no DoorDash.
No.
All right. So one of the things you like to say is you say, many talk about leaving a legacy. I prefer to focus on living one. What does that mean to you?
I appreciate that question, Casey. So when I speak to audiences, I will frequently ask them what they believe the meaning of legacy is. And if it was Family Feud, the number one answer on the board is something you leave behind. And that's a valid way of understanding the concept of legacy. But the problem is that if that's the ultimate element of legacy, then you're tossing it over your shoulder as you walk out the proverbial door, and you hope that the next generation catches it, that they don't fumble it, that they know what to do with it when they get it. And whether that's money or whether it's principles or whether it's a cause that you are championing, whatever it might be that you're handing off, if you shift from leaving it to living it, then you have an opportunity to mentor, to coach, to guide that next generation on what it looks like to carry that banner and carry it well. And that starts, fortunately, much earlier than what we would generally perceive, like, oh, I get to think about legacy later. I get to worry about that later, assuming you know how much time you're going to have, which of course you don't.
Exactly.
And you miss out on all those opportunities that are teachable moments where you can be side by side with the organization you care about, or with kiddos and grandkiddos or whomever it is that you have that opportunity to mentor and partner with and help to live that legacy actively rather than just passively toss it over your shoulder at the end.
I love that a lot. And I want to share another story. I don't know why my parents are so on my mind today. So my mom, she passed away last year, but she was in the middle of writing a book.
Wow.
And that was going to be her legacy. She didn't finish it. And she sent it to me, and she asked me at some point, she goes, if I don't finish this, will you?
Wow.
And I was like, I will. I haven't yet, but I will. but I mean, I feel like that's kind of what you're talking about, because she was living that legacy. She just didn't get the chance to finish it, but then she wanted to pass it on. But again, it's one of those things, you toss it over your shoulder.
Right. Hopefully they know where am I headed with that book? How do you pick up from that point?
Yeah. And
Sure.
I caught it, but what do I do with it now?
Exactly.
And I feel like it's important, but at the same time, I also feel like that was her legacy, not necessarily mine.
Understood. No, that's a heavy weight to carry.
Yeah. So I heard through the grapevine that you have another book coming out.
That is true. I do, and it's a pivot completely from this one to a certain extent. The principle of this, right, underneath is really about purpose and impact and relationships. A legacy is written on the hearts of the people that you interact with on a daily basis. And so from that perspective, it's very much in line with that. But it's also a departure from it because it has nothing to do with finance. It has nothing to do with creating a roadmap for your life. It's called The Canteen. And it walks through experiences that I had in Zimbabwe and South Africa at the age of 19. I was there for a month, kept a journal, have photos, and it interleaves journal entries with photos and then lessons that I learned while I was there. It's 26 years later, hardly a day goes by that I don't think about Africa and think about things the Lord showed me while I was there.
That's very interesting. So you were there for a month.
I was.
And how many years ago?
26.
And it's still, is that heavy?
Nearly every day.
Wow.
Yep.
Can you share with us one of the lessons that maybe you share in the book?
Be happy to. So one of the key things is this concept of what is the source of your provision. And it's very natural, very obvious there that what happens is a direct connection of wild animals either do or don't interact with me, and rain either does or does not occur. And so the very first night I was in the bush, the elder of that village was sharing a story, and he was talking casually the way that we would talk about traffic earlier today, and was describing the fact that elephants were trampling crops, that hordes of ants were eating anything that the elephants didn't trample, and that his nephew 6 weeks ago had gotten too close to the river and was snatched by a crocodile.
Oh, that's like my biggest fear in life.
Right. So like it is a complete departure from the pristine environment that we've crafted for ourselves, where we've created all of these creature comforts, as it were, to go, no, there's this very raw element of how life operates. And there's a very natural dependence and connection with the land and with wildlife and with the cycle of rain, for example. And so a very practical thing that I've carried with me is the concept of a direct deposit. So earlier this month, you likely received a direct deposit in some fashion in your bank account. We tend to look forward to a routine of this, whether it's once a month, once a week, a couple of times a month. Here's a direct deposit that I get. And it would be easy to look at that and go, oh, well, that's because of my hard work. That's why that direct deposit occurred. And though there's an element of that, there's a second level to go, well, wait a second. If it weren't for the family I was born into, if it weren't for the free country that I'm in, if it weren't for the relationships that have been supporting me along the way, if it weren't for all of those opportunities, if it weren't for all of the ways in which others have poured into me, the Lord has provided for me, I would not have received that. And so, you can see every time you get a direct deposit as an opportunity to pause and just be grateful for all that's been done for you and everything that brought you to where you're at. The second thing is to then go well beyond money and to say every single day I have direct deposits being made in my heart, into my life. The connection that you and I have was a direct deposit that Damon made into our respective lives to connect us.
Yep.
And right now, we've got an opportunity to make direct deposits into one another's lives, just in the dialogue that we had before this interview, what we're having right now during the interview, and what we'll share afterwards. And so it's a shift in thinking to see direct deposits being made on a routine basis and see it as an opportunity to pivot and focus on gratitude.
I love looking at this like a direct deposit. I think that's such a great analogy, and especially the way you explained it with, Damon making those direct deposits into our lives,
Yes.
and then vice versa. And then, you've come to a Success North Dallas event since then.
Absolutely.
And met more people that
Correct.
you can continue to make in those direct deposits. And
That's right.
I love that. I'm going to totally use that
Please
going
do.
forward.
Please do.
So I know you talk about living your legacy and not leaving it behind, but what legacy do you want to leave behind? Is it your 2.5-year-old grandson?
It's not a bad one.
That's pretty powerful. So
I would say a legacy of gratitude would be part of it. I would say helping people to identify their potential and to release that potential. So often we are blocked by our own limitations just from a mindset standpoint. And so helping people have optimism and break past that would be another piece of it. And then the last thing I would just say is traditions that we've created in our family. And Go Big is one of those, but there's a lot of really, really sweet traditions. I'll share one other, which is my grandfather, who was raised in Kentucky, which is why it's Bluegrass Legacy Group, and had a farm. He sold the farm, and every Christmas we would have envelopes that he would hand out to us. And in the envelope, you'd have a check. And it was him just giving back to us. And if you were married, you got a little bit bigger check. You had kids, you had a little bit bigger check. You had more expenses. And he was fond of going, I had to kill a calf for that. Or that's 3 chickens. And so he saw everything in terms of the farm, right? And it was, it'd been 15 years since he sold the farm, but he still thought of it in those terms. We now do an envelope for each of the kiddos, each of the 6 kids, but in it is some kind of activity, some kind of experience, some kind of an event. And so at the end of Christmas, after we've done all the, tchotchkes and so forth, it's here's something we're going to do this year to create a memory that's going to be a lasting connection about time we spent and invested with one another long after any of the other presents under the tree have decayed.
I think I'm going to cry. That is so sweet. I love that. So many things I'm going to start doing. I'm going to go big. I'm going to make direct deposits. Now I'm going to do envelopes.
There we go.
Those are some really great traditions that have been handed down, and then I'm sure some that you've started yourself.
Absolutely.
And I just absolutely love that. So I'm going to ask you some of our VIP questions.
Okay,
now.
hit me.
I'm probably not going to ask all 3 of them, but
VIP.
I'm going to ask the 2 that I really want to know.
All right.
So what is one thing you do each morning to set your day up for success?
Ooh, wonderful question. So for me, it's twofold. Number one, I exercise every morning physically, but then the second would be I exercise mentally and spiritually in the form of journaling. And the journaling is so helpful to get my head clear and to make sure that I keep first things first.
I love that. Man after my own heart.
You bet.
Well, maybe not the exercising part, but I do love to journal. Okay, so if your life's work was being summarized in a news article, what would the headline be?
Oh my goodness. It would be that bald guy manages to make significant impact.
And he does every
Sure.
day.
You
How
bet.
do people find you?
Oh, wow. Usually they follow my laugh in whatever room I'm in. I've been told that. But short of that, we've actually made it really, really easy. So KyleGabhart.com.
Okay.
KyleGabhart.com.
And we'll be sure to put that in the show notes for you. This has been an absolute blast.
I've loved it.
I don't want you to leave.
Okay.
I want to hang out forever. Maybe I'll put you in a closet somewhere. Don't tell anybody. No, it's been really great. And I just have one last thing to say to you.
Please.
You are a VIP.
And that's a wrap for today. Join us next week here on the We Are VIP podcast. We'd love to know how we can help you be a VIP. To find out more, log on to wearevip.com.